Okay, a good walk. Kum len in a black gemara. Mitzvah Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Bahaloischa. We are up to the Mem Ches Amud Aleph. We'll start from the very top of the page. Okay, so the Papa has a series of questions that he asks. Next question. So boy, the Papa asks a question. He goes back and forth between the laws of mincha when it comes to kmitza, when you scoop your 3 fingers worth of the flour offering, and he also talks about the chafina, what the Kohen Gadol does when with the ketores, the incense on Yom Kippur, the special extra incense that he has to do. So what happens if dovke lekaimitz bedoifna demana? He took the kaimitz. You're supposed to put it. He puts the 3 fingers in, and he scoops out the kmitza, and then he puts it into another vessel, another clay sharis. And what he did was he attached it to the side of the wall. And the question is that valid? Mai, do we say toich kli beinen? We need it inside the vessel. Well, you could attack is that it's inside the confines of the walls of the vessel. We need it to be placed inside kitikuna, the correct way, binan. And the correct way is to be in the bottom of the keli. But halakha, we don't have that. So therefore, teku, it remains with the question as well. Boy, we jump a few generations. Sorry? The son of the son of Ashi, asks a question as well. What about if Afchelemana, he takes this vessel, he turns it upside down, and the Dovke Lekaimitz Ba'arisa de money, he turns the vessel upside down, but the bottom of the vessel has a rim as well. It's not the ideal way of using this vessel, but it has a rim, so he puts the kmitza inside on top of the bottom of the vessel, and it has walls around it. So he put it on the floor of the vessel, but it's not really the normal way of doing it. Is mahu? Do we say hanocha b'toichai b'inavika? It has to be inside the confines of a wall. It is. Ideal hanocha ketikna b'inam. We needed that the hanocha should be done the correct way. But leka, you don't have that. Teku, remain with the question as well. Okay, now we continue. Boy, that Papa had a question. We say that the Kohen Gadol has to take 2 fistfuls, and he brings it. He has his hands together. He takes 2 fistfuls of the incense, and he brings it in. He puts it in the ladle, and then we said that the ladle. We had a discussion yesterday. We'll discuss it soon. He takes the ladle and brings it inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and he perhaps. Either he puts it directly onto the coal and the shovel of the coal, or he puts it back into his 2 hands. And the question is, when we say that every kohen, depending on the size of the hands, that's how much incense you place inside. So the question is, mechukis agedushas? Did you smooth it out so it should be like straight line or level, or gedushas, or is it piled up? You pile it up as long as it's being protected by your hands, even though it's piled up high and higher, it's good enough. Rababa said to Rabashi, neither. Tashma, we learned in a brisa coming here. We say it has to be the fistfuls of the Kohen Gadol. Doesn't have to be smooth. It shouldn't be piled up too high. It's floating on top. It's a little bit more than it's not exactly level. It's a bit raised above that. Okay, we're up to the Mem Ches Amud Aleph, about 10 lines from the top of the page. Tanan Hasam. We learned over there. So the Gemara brings an interesting thing. And the Gemara brings here a little hakdama. What happens, when you shecht an animal, there's a number of activities. So first, the shchita is the first activity, and then you have to have a receptacle to receive the blood, which we call Kabbalah. And then and the blood it's the first blood, the dam, that comes, the dam shahanefesh tolabai. When you shech the animal, the blood that squirts out, that's where the nefesh is. And that has to fall directly into a keli. And then you transport that keli to the mizbech, which we call it haylacha. And then you spray it onto the mizbech, which we call zrika. So what happens if nishpach hadam ala ritzvah? What happens if the blood, when it's spurted out from the animal's neck, it first landed on the floor? The question is, can you collect the blood and put it in the vessel afterwards, or is it too late? For us, we gather together, it's possible, because it has to go directly from the neck into this utensil. Minakeli ala ritzvah. But what happens if after, it went straight from the neck into this vessel, but then the vessel turned over or something, and it spilled out from the vessel to the ground? But also, when they collected it, kosher is kosher. That's all right, because what the main criteria is that the blood should go from the neck straight into the keli. So how do you know that? How do you know that has to go straight from the neck into the keli? Can't land on the floor and then collect it? Because the Tanu Rabbana, we learned, it says in the pasuk, it says that the kohen, the anointed kohen, the lokach, he should take me dam hapar. If you read it literally, it means from the blood of the ox, which it means it's not, you don't have to have all the blood, you just need to have some of the blood. And so this is what the Brisa says. Midam hanefesh, which blood do we want that the kohen should take in this receptacle? The blood that has the nefesh inside it. Those are blood that squirts out as soon as you shecht. Or not when you make a little incision in the skin before you did the full shchita, before you cut through the trachea and the esophagus, before you did that, a little bit of blood comes coming out, that runs out. That's not the blood we're talking about. Nor vidam tamtzis, nor the blood after the original squirt, it continues flowing. That's not the blood we're talking about. And then we continue. Midam hapon. What we're going to do is we're going to take the mem from midam and we're going to put it added to the word mahapar. So instead of reading middam hapar, from the blood of this ox, we're going to say dam mehapar, blood from the ox. Dam mehapar yikablanu. That means that the blood has to come directly from the ox to be called kabbalah. It has to go straight when you shecht it into this vessel. If you're going to say middam hapar, yeah.
What gives Chazal the right to play with the words of the Torah in that way? I mean, we got lots of examples of them changing words or swapping words. I mean, who gives them the right to do that? Under what's the principle that gives them that right?
We had it a few times. We will have it a few times. It's called Goydin u'Meisifin, as we'll see in a minute, where they take off from one word and they add it to another word, and they have to have a reason why they're doing it, as we'll see in a minute why they're doing it here. We do have another concept, which is called, you cannot take a knife and cut up the words and completely contradict what it says there before. So sometimes we do guide in the Masifin, we take off from one word and we add to another, and sometimes we don't. So we need to have some hechrich, either a Kabbalah they have, going back to Moshe Rabbeinu, or like over here it says, if you're going to learn the other way around. So there's two ways of learning. Either to learn it means some of the blood of the animal, midam hapar, if you take it literally, or if we do it in our method, we're going to say dam mehapar, blood from the cow, which means that the blood has to go directly from the cow into this vessel. Now, what's wrong with learning it literally? It says the Gemara, if you learn literally, middam hapar, middam, afilun mixes dam. If you're going to say it means literally that as long as some of the blood entered, that's good enough. I didn't have you to say hamekabel, when you receive the blood, tzarich sheyekabel as kol damei shel par. It's not sufficient just to have some of the blood. You need to have all the blood of the par. And Shenemar, it says, there's kol, because there's another pasuk where it says, there's kol dam hapar, all the blood from this par is yishpach el yisaid mizbech. You should pour down the yisaid mizbech. So one pasuk tells us clearly you need all the blood, but there's another pasuk that says middam hapar, from the blood, as if to say only some of the blood. So therefore we have no choice but to use that methodology called goydin u'masifin. So therefore, it gives us no choice, but we have to learn my middam hapar, take off the mem, we'll add it to the hapar, dam mehapar yikablenu. And we learn from there that the blood has to go directly from the shchita into this utensil, the blood that squirts out. And we hold goydin u'meisifin v'darshin. We hold that we take off and we add on. Okay, so now the Gemara says, so boy, the Papa, this is a lead into his question. Papa has a question. What about, okay, we talked about blood, that if it falls down straight to the ground, it's no good. So let me ask you a question. What about nispazer haktoiris? What about if some of the ktoiris, some of these spices, they're scattered around from his hand, some of them went blowing away. Mao, what is the din in this case? And so he had his full hands over there, put together. And some of the things blew away. What happens? Can he go and pick it up from the ground or not? And what's the question? We learned clearly that if it came straight from the neck, it has to go into a keli. But once it's in a keli and falls to the ground, then you can pick it up. And the question is, how do we view your hands? Because the way we did it was, he takes it in his hands, and then he puts it into a ladle. The question is as follows. Gemara will explain. Do we say the hand, that is the keli? The Torah said clearly when it comes to a Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, the hands is tantamount to putting it into a keli. So therefore, as long as the Victorious landed in the hands, then we don't care if it blows away afterwards. You can go collect it and pick it up. Is that what we say? Or do we say, no, since you're going to put it into a ladle afterwards, there's 2 steps here. Usually it's only 1 step, right? From the neck of the animal straight into keli. Here you go with the potatoes, you put into the hands, and then from the hands, you put into a ladle. So how do we view the hands? Do we say the hand is already considered klei sharis? So if it falls down afterwards, pick it up, no problem. Or do we say the ladle is a klei sharis, and the hand is just a medium to get there? Now, what's the Gemara's question? Because if you remember, we learned a few days ago, the only reason why we need a ladle is because we have no choice. Not because the Torah insists on having a ladle. We just didn't have a choice. How else can you manage to bring in the potatoes and the coal all in one go? Remember, it says the potatoes should go once. You can't go back and forth. So this is the only way that we can do it is by putting it into a ladle. So is that therefore turn the ladle into a klei sharis or no? Because it's the only reason we have it because there's no choice. It's really the hands of the klei sharis. So this is what he asks. Mao, do we say yodoi ketzavara behemedami? Do we say the hand is merely an extension of the animal? In other words, it's still you still haven't put it yet in the klei sharis. Upsula, and therefore falls on the ground. That's it. You cannot pick it up. Or do we say kichlei sharis dami? Your hands, that's the klei sharis. The loy psula, and it is not possible. Teku. We remain with a question. So now, boy, I pop another question. What about if chishav bechafinas potatoes? We learned in the Gemara. If let's say that we had 2 concepts of pigul. Pigul means any leftover from the animal and you eat it outside of the allotted time. It's called nice, leftover. Pigul is if at the time of the shchita or the time of the zrikas, spilling the blood, you had in mind that you will eat it in the wrong time. That's called pigul chutz lezmane, the wrong time. And for that, if you eat it, even if you ate it in the correct time, you're chayiv kares. You shouldn't eat it. You're liable. And then we have another kind of pigul, which is chutz l'mekayma. You had in mind to eat it in the wrong place. You're supposed to eat it in Yerushalayim. You had in mind to eat it outside Yerushalayim. You're supposed to eat it in Beis Hamikdash. You had in mind to eat it outside. And the question is, do we have the concept of pigul when it comes to potatoes? If the Kohen Gadol decided that he was going to, when he was scooping up the potatoes, he had in mind to do the tiv of potatoes the day after Yom Kippur. Does that render it possible or not? It says, "Papa chishav bechafin potatoes." What's then? I mean, do we say yalef meloy mincha? Do we say we use Gzeirah Shabbat to learn from a mincha we had before meloy kumtzai, and over here it says meloy, his hands. So therefore we make Gzeirah Shabbat that just like by a mincha, mahasam mahanya b'machshavah. By a mincha we say that if you had the wrong thought in mind, it's pigul. So hachanami mahanya machshavah. So too here by chafina, when it comes to collecting the Torah, is the same thing. If the Kohen Gadol had the wrong thing in mind, it ruins it. Or maybe we don't really compare the 2. Rashi said to Rapapa, he asked the following question. Toshma, come in here. In other words, before we had a question whether he's saying even if we don't have the Gzeirah Shavah, how do we view the pigul when it comes to chafir? Toshma, come in here. It says that Hoisi Rabbi Akiva added on that haktoides, when it comes to ktoides, when it comes to lavoina, when it comes to the incense, the frankincense. So he says that when it comes to what do you call it? It comes to ktoides, it comes to lavoina, but it comes to cholim, when it comes to the kol she'im noga tvul yom b'miktasan pasas kolim. The law is that if you touch something, that part becomes tummy, not the rest. But if everything shares one vessel, if something is in a vessel and it's a klei sharis, so it made it holy, then if you touch any part of the food inside that vessel, everything else becomes tummy at the same time. So kasal kadato, so we thought, and he includes tyrus in that as well. So we thought, now we're talking about a tvul yom. A tvul yom is somebody who was tummy, went to the mikveh, and the only thing that this tvul yom now has to do is to wait until head of shemesh, till the sun sets. His level of tumah is like a sheni. Now, when it comes to chul and ordinary things, a sheni touches it, nothing happens. When it comes to truma, it passes it. When it comes to kachim, he makes it tummy. So if a tvul yom touches any of these things which are kachim, in other words, if they became kodesh, if they were put in a vessel, it became holy, and if a tvul yom touches one part of it, the whole thing becomes tummy. So we thought, so Shim Nogat Full Yom Pasal Kula Kasakta, we thought with the Pasal Full Yom, since we say that a Full Yom passes it, so what does that prove? That proves that the Kodesh now became Kodesh, that all of these things became holy. and therefore Apostle Namilina. The law is that anything that things are not, if you leave it overnight, it does not become possible. But once you sanctify it, you got to work with it straight away. If you leave it overnight, it's called psulin, it becomes possible. So since we say that a tful yom touches these things once it's inside a keli, the entire thing becomes tameh, proves that what? That it became kodesh, and all that became kodesh. So too, it has a psul of lina. If you leave it overnight, it becomes possible. Umedalina pasla, and if lina passes it, then surely pasla nami machshava. Then the thought of leaving it for tomorrow also should render it possible.
Why do they call it Levona and not Keteris?
The levona is what you put by the shulchan, the lechem hapanim. He's giving different examples. He calls this either the Keteris or the levona. He's giving different examples. Any of these things that if the tful yom happens to touch, or the gechom or the coal, because they are put inside a special vessel, so they all became holy. If the tful yom touches part of it, the whole thing becomes possible because they're kodesh, and the tful yom possible, metame kodesh. So therefore, we're saying that since now that it becomes kodesh, it's possible lina. We think, and possible lina, then the thought of lina also passes it. Okay, he boy the Papa. Another question. The Papa really goes to town over here. What happens if chishev bechatiyas gecholim? What happens if he thought while he was raking the coals and putting it into that shovel, he was thinking the wrong thought? Does it render the Torah's puzzle, or does it render the two ways of learning? The question regarding the coal itself, does it render the coal puzzle? No, when it comes, coal is only a preparatory step. So therefore, is it also a problem because it's not really the carbon itself, it's not the Torah itself, or not? Does it ruin the Torah? Or another way of learning Pshat is, does it ruin the coal? Mao, what's the shaila? Do we say machshire mitzvah ke mitzvah dami? Do we say that the preparation of a mitzvah is just like the mitzvah itself? And therefore, just like we said a minute ago, that if you had thoughts during the avodah, the wrong thoughts, it ruins it. So too, when you had the wrong thoughts in the preparation of the mitzvah, ruins it as well. Or perhaps no, or maybe since it's not the avodah itself, it's only a step before, it's a preparation. You need the coal to be able to burn that incense, and therefore having the wrong thoughts there doesn't matter. Now, even though we just learned before, we just learned a minute ago about that. It says there, one of the things that I mentioned there that tful yom touches it ruins was gechal and kol. So just like we answered when it comes to putting it in your hands, that it's possible, and if lina is possible, and if lina is possible, we automatically assume thinking about having the wrong time is possible as well, but not when it comes to kol, because all the Rishonim say kol is not really avodah. So maybe actual lina makes it possible. But if you're just thinking about it, it's just a step removed, and it's not really the avodah, maybe it doesn't possible. So Teiku, one thing's for sure, Leo's going to be very busy answering all of these questions. Another question.
Hang on. If the preliminaries of the mitzvah is the same as the mitzvah, then why don't you make a bracha when you build a sukkah?
Very good question. The Yerushalmi says clearly that you have to make a bracha when you build a sukkah. In our Gemara, we're going to have in the Sech, first of all, we actually have in Rashi and Daf Chesam and Aleph Makkos, we will have, where Rashi says building a sukkah is a mitzvah. And we have a Mishnah in Shavuos about a person makes a shvu about building a sukkah or not. We hold you don't make a bracha, because the bracha that you make, shechayanu, it's only a preparation. It's called a hechshe mitzvah. And here we're talking about karbonis. And the hechshe mitzvah, when it comes to a mitzvah, has a different status than a hechshe mitzvah when it comes to karbonis. But there are opinions that hold, it's definitely like the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch in Kuntres Achas said it's the beginning of the mitzvah of sukkah in the laws of Ner Shabbos Kodesh. And Yerushalmi says you do make a bracha, so there are. Avineza Paskins, you should make a bracha, so there are. Our authorities hold that it is, even by mitzvah.
Lamaise, the mitzvah is to sit in the leisure basukah. So if you built a sukkah and you didn't sit in it, you didn't do anything.
No, they say there's two mitzvahs. One is to build, and one says sukkah tasalacha. Right? It says in the Torah, sukkah tasalacha, which has nothing to do with sitting. There's a mitzvah to build a sukkah. In fact, it says in the poskim, you shouldn't have a guy doing it for you, especially the schach part, because it's a mitzvah putting it on. And you shouldn't give a mitzvah away to someone who has no mitzvah. You should do it yourself, or at least pick some of them up and put them down so that you did the mitzvah of sukkah.
So what is the bracha?
Lasa sukkah. Those who make a bracha, the Yerushalmi says you make a bracha, says lasa sukkah, to make a sukkah. Okay. Boy, next thing. So now we learned in the Gemara as well, we're learning Gemara as well, that all the activities of a kohen has to be done with the right hand. In fact, a kohen, a lefty, is disqualified from being a kohen. That's considered a mum. It has to be right-handed. And all the activities have to be done with the right hand. We learn from the Tzara. We know that it comes to the shchita, has to be done with the right hand, and it comes to the zrika and the kabbalah. But when it comes to halacha, the transporting, the ferrying across the blood, even though it's one of the avodas, and how do we know it's an avodah? Because it says they should bring it towards the mizbech, so we know it's an avodah. But there, the word kain is not mentioned. So therefore, the question is, because the word kain is not mentioned, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, first of all, if you can use your left hand in this case. If you carry the left hand, what's it in that? Is it all right or not? He said, we learned in our Mishnah clearly, where does the Kohen Gadol, how does the Kohen Gadol transport the Torahs from outside into the Kodesh HaKadoshim? We learned clearly he has a ladle in the left hand. Not as a machta, he takes the machta, the shovel in the right hand, there's a kafas and the spoon in the left hand. So clearly from here we see that when it comes to transporting whatever it is you're about to bring up, you can use your left hand. Says, well, that's good, but why don't you bring it? There's another source. Why don't you bring the following source? Why don't we bring a source? That's talking about an exceptional case. It's not about the Mizbeach. It's in Kodesh HaKadoshim. Maybe we can argue. Why? There's another source which clearly, directly tells us regarding transporting something to the Mizbeach. Now we learned haregel. Okay, we chopped up we cut up the different parts of the animal. We place them on the ramp, and then from the ramp we bring it up to Mizbeach. We had that a while ago. So we learned that now we learned in a Mishnah haregel. So the regel comes with the head, the right leg. So haregel shel yilmin, the right foreleg goes together with the head. You cut it in one piece. So the leg itself is in the left side. You take it on your left hand because the head is on the right side. Ubeis oira lechutz, and the way it works is the leg itself, the part that you cut off the leg from the rest of the animal. It's is to have it sticking out in front of you, facing the mizbech. So you have it facing yourself. You have that part that was cut off facing yourself, and the hide that covers over is facing the outside. So we see clearly from here that they carry things with the left hand. Clearly, you have left hand. So because the head was on the right side, and the right foreleg was on the left side. Says the Gemara, Ima Hasam. The reason why we didn't bring that as a proof is how I would have thought Hani Mili over there. When it comes to transporting things which are not essential for the carbon itself, it really doesn't matter which side you carry, right or left. The loyma akva kapara, if you didn't bring the limbs on the mizbech, the animal is still all right. When it comes to the blood, remember it's pivotal for the carbon, the blood, the sprinkling on his beach. Maybe when it comes to the blood, maybe it's important to use your right hand. Maybe it's not good enough for the left hand. That's why we bring the case of the Yom Kippur, which is the Titus is very important, obviously, and using the left hand. Okay, we'll ask a question of that. We'll ask a question of Zeta. So you say that the left hand is all right. Well, that's a question. It says clearly, Zor a Yisrael, or a lady, anybody who's not a Kohen, or Oinen, somebody who a close relative passed away, or a Shikr, somebody who's drunk. Either, like Rashi learns in other places, it means somebody drank wine, and Tesis learns even through any alcohol. Ubalmum, somebody who has a blemish, they're disqualified. All of these four cases are disqualified from carbon. When it comes to receiving the blood, clearly when it comes to transporting the blood as well, uvazik and sprinkling, passes. Okay, what's the problem? The next part, the if the kohen decides to sit, and we know that it says la'amad l'sheidas that you have to stand and serve Hashem, and they sat, disqualified. The kohen smile says clearly here, if you use your left hand, and one of the examples, one of the activities was halacha. Puzzle to Yufta, it's a question of Sheshis. So we repudiate Rav Sheshis. So the Gemara wonders, Rav Sheshis knew this brisa. So, and we know for a fact Rav Sheshis knew this brisa, and yet for whatever reason he wasn't concerned. So what happened here? Says the Gemara, I don't understand. But Rav Sheshis, Rav Sheshis himself used this brisa to ask a question on Rav Chizda. So he knew about this brisa. What's the story there? The Amalei Rav Sheshes once said to the speaker of Rav Chizda, he said, "Boy, Rav Chizda, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go ask a question for Rav Chizda. Haylacha bizar mahu. Can a Yisrael or a Levi, because they're permitted to shech the animal, can they be the one to transport the blood as well?" Ask him that question. Amalei, so Rav Chizda responded, Ksheda, he said that is kosher. And he said, Mikra Misayeni, I'll prove it from a pasuk. It says by Melech HaYayash. In fact, the Torah says the most astonishing thing that they brought a Korban Pesach in the times of the King Yehoash, which was in the latter years of the first Beis Hamikdash, and there never was a Korban Pesach like that from the times of Yehoshua. Everybody wonders exactly what does that mean. How could it be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years they brought Korban Pesachim, and what happened then? So the simple shot over there is he gave every single year the sheep that they needed. Nobody had to bring their own sheep. He gave hundreds of thousands of sheep to all the Yidden, and that was so unique about that Pesach. But
why did they mention Shikori? They don't mention Shikori.
They mentioned disqualifications of a kohen. Either if he's the wrong person, he's Israel, or if he's drunk, or if he has a blemish, a physical blemish, or he decides to drink. And a shikar is not allowed to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. So Chizah said, I have a pasuk support me. He says in the pasuk, "Vayishchatu haPesach," they shechted the Pesach, and then it says, "Vayizirku hakoyanim," the kohen then sprinkled the blood. Miyadam, they took the blood from whoever shechted it, which were the Levim. There were so many kabbanas then they didn't have enough koyanim, so the Levim shechted it, and the koyanim took the blood to spray. That means the Levim brought it to the mizbeach to give it to the kohen. The kohen standing by the mizbeach to sprinkle the blood, and they brought it to him, who did obviously the Levim, and the kohen took it from them. So you see clearly from here that a zar can do the halacha. That's what Rav Chizda said.
Can't anybody do the shechita? I thought that it didn't have to be a kohen; it could be a Yisrael to do the shechita.
Yeah, exactly. But they did more than shechita. The way Rav Chizda's learning is they not only did the shechita. So what happened was the Levi did the shechita. A kohen stood there and with a receptacle and received the blood. The Levi then took that vessel and he walked with it because they didn't have enough manpower. He walked with it to the mizbeach, brought it to the kohen there who took the blood and sprinkled the mizbeach. So we see clearly from here that halacha, the transporting of the blood, can be done by someone else other than the kohen. That's what Rav Chizda said. The Levim, they went and stripped the animals. So Rav Sheshes asked the question. Well, Moise, Rav Sheshes, he wasn't talking about the left hand, he was talking about a Yisrael, but it's the same brisa. Well, Moise, Rav Sheshes, it says clearly the brisa that a zar, anybody who's not a kohen or an einin or a shikar or balmum, the kabbalah, the lochazik, apostle, the chen yoshev, the chen smar, apostle. So Rav Sheshes knew about this brisa and he used it to attack Rav Chizda. So how come he didn't attack himself? Why did he pass him that you're left-handed, you're allowed to transport with your left hand? Says the Gemara, Basar the Shamba, after he heard it, Hadar Isrei. First he had the opinion about the left hand. Then they brought his brisa and completely repudiated what he said. Then once he learned about the brisa, he used his brisa against Rav Chizda. Says the Gemara, but Rav Chizda Rav Chizda brought a pasuk that corroborated his opinion. And says the Gemara, according to the halacha, the avud ma'ase itztava. What happened was the kohen, a Levi shechted it, a kohen received the blood. The kohen then walked with the blood to the Levim who was standing next to his mizbeach and put the vessel in the hand of the Levi and was like putting it on a chair. The Levi stood still, didn't move, didn't budge, didn't move, but he held it and he waited for the kohen to take the blood and sprinkle on his mizbeach. So there was no halacha done by the Yisrael. So that completes today's Gemara. Does anybody